While many of us are waiting for the upcoming DLC to Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, an awesome fan game has recently been put out with quality that honestly rivals an official release. This game is known as The Glitched Attraction, and it has several stages with plenty of callbacks to previous FNAF games, while also blending some really cool escape room ideas. And of course, much like many other indie horror games, some fans have been quick to try and speedrun through this game as fast as possible, and after only about a month since its release, the speedruns have already been pretty well optimized with a few neat tricks to boot. And if you'd like to check out my first playthrough of this game in full, I just recently uploaded it to my VOD channel, which I'll have linked for you in the description below, and I hope to see you there. Anyways, smack that like button below to save yourself from Nightmare Fredbear. Let's see how this glitched attraction has already been beaten in under 18 minutes. Alright, so to start, I guess I should mention that since launch, a few updates to the game have been made, which, for whatever reason, the developers felt like they needed to patch out some cool speedrun exploits, but on the flip side, they did add some quality of life improvements, such as being able to skip cutscenes. As such, speedrunning this game has been currently split into two major any% categories, one for the versions 1.16 and newer, as well as any prior. Now personally, I've been running the 1.17 version of the game, so I'll mostly be showing that one here, but I'll also talk about some of the cool tricks that have also been patched out. Anyways, we start off the run as soon as we're able to move in this lobby area where we get to meet a pair of comedy bots. This one gives us some exposition, mentions the bite of 87, says this word, and then finally, after we give him some cash to enter the attraction, fork over our backpack, and quickly skip through some tutorial stuff, we're able to move on to the next room where we're greeted to a concert by the original 4 FNAF animatronics. Here we have to quickly press this button, which makes Foxy here give us a flashlight, and then after we press this big red button, in typical indie horror game fashion, it's time to walk through some vents. Cause yeah, this definitely seems like a safe thing to do in an attraction. While we're walking through this vent, I guess now's a good time to mention one of the easiest tricks to playing this game faster, and that's simply to just walk diagonally. Basically, since the movement vectors aren't normalized, walking or running diagonally is considerably faster than just moving in one direction. Essentially, both movement vectors appear added together. So yeah, if you're wondering why I'm walking at a weird angle most of the time, that's why. Anyways, math aside, after crawling through the vents, we reach the first attraction inspired by FNAF 4 known as Nightmares. Here we are tasked with escaping this room while dealing with Nightmare Balloon Boy in his chair, Nightmare Fredbear outside, Brettles which pop up from time to time, as well as Nightmare Marionette who can crawl into the room from this giant hole in the wall. Right as soon as you start the stage, you'll want to seek out 2 different keys to open up the chest on the dresser here. These keys are randomly hidden in the many different drawers in the room, and for the fastest time, you'll want both of them to spawn in the same drawer. Then after using the keys to unlock the chest, you'll get the last missing piece to this puzzle of Freddy, which of course, next we'll have to solve. You'll want to do this obviously as fast as possible, but don't get too focused on it as you'll periodically have to check in on Balloon Boy and Fredbear, otherwise, yeah. After solving the puzzle, it will start to lower to reveal a hidden code behind it, then you have to remember this code and punch it into the safe that's found in the nightstand by the bed here. Once that's open, you'll find a hammer inside, which you'll want to quickly use to remove the nails on the planks boarding up the exit in the closet. Once open, you just barely escape Nightmare Bonnie to move on to the next room. There is actually a really cool speedrun trick that you can also do in this first room, and it actually still works in version 1.17 of the game, but it's just a bit too inconsistent, at least for my liking. Basically, after you get the piece of the puzzle from the chest, by standing up against the top right drawer of the dresser, opening it, and then moving towards it after it's fully opened, you can actually clip onto the dresser. From there, you can walk to the side of it to make your way higher, and then after Balloon Boy runs over, you actually basically use him as a bridge to walk over to the other wall here. Then once you get into this corner, you have to perfectly time dropping the puzzle piece when he's beneath you, which lets you get right up onto the walls, and from there you can entirely skip the rest of this room. It's a really cool trick if you can manage to pull it off, it's just that you're basically at the mercy of Balloon Boy actually coming over to get you in time. Too quickly and you won't be able to get onto the dresser, too late and either Marionette or Fredbear will bamboozle you. It can certainly save you some time if the stars align, it's just definitely not the most consistent trick in the books. But moving on now, next up is Toys, a level based on FNAF 2, where here we initially deal with a roaming toy chica who will chase and falcon punch you, her little Bob and Cupcake that alerts her to your presence if stepped on, as well as Mangle, who will crawl around the ceiling vents and will occasionally drop down to ruin your day. The first task here is to quickly find several notes in the area which tell you the order of which buttons you have to press on this keypad here. This order is also randomized every playthrough, but to save some time, by process of elimination, you only really need to find 5 of these notes. Then, after inputting the correct code, one little speedrun trick you can do here is to pause the game and then switch the difficulty from normal to casual. And by doing this, you can actually skip having to wait an uncomfortably long time for this door here to open. Then, once loaded back in, you have to flip all of these switches to turn on the power to start the second phase of this area. To open the exits to the stage, you'll need to flip this switch, but to power it, you'll need to complete this gear train by finding several randomly scattered gears in the previous room. Also, a new mechanic is now introduced with Freddy here in this booth. You have to keep cranking this box to keep the music going. If you don't, or crank it for too long, Freddy will escape his booth and then block the power room door, effectively killing your run. There aren't any real speedrun tricks for this section. Basically, you just have to memorize all the possible gear spawn locations, avoid the enemies, crank that soldier boy, place the gears in place, power up the switch, and then bam, you can move on. Now next up is a room where things can get pretty dicey for speedrunning this game, as there's a lot of luck involved. This room, inspired by FNAF 3, introduces us to Springtrap, who can enter the doors on each side or through the vent on the ceiling, Dreadbear, who can just bust through a door, as well as Phantom Foxy, who doesn't kill you but rather just jump scares you to mess with your head. Once the stage starts, you'll have to find a code which will be hidden in the room, and then you have to memorize it and enter it into the console in the back of the room to enable a developer mode, which then gives you a coin that you can slap into the arcade machine here. We then get a nice little throwback to FNAF World, which I also just made a speedrun video of, where we start a little fetch quest here. You have to bring balloons to Balloon Boy here, to get the fish to bring here, to then get a lily pad to cross over to this guy who needs a clock, to then get a Furby looking thing to bring here to get a key to the cave, and then you need to get a torch to get another key, and then you're all done and are greeted with a little cutscene that honestly ends way creepier than I expected it to. Sorry, is this like a casual checkpoint or a... sorry, I'm being rudely interrupted by a fatal error. Now you have to have a lot of luck with this arcade game, as each of the items randomly spawn in different spots, and if they spawn too far away, it can cost a lot of precious time. And time is something you definitely don't have here, as you're constantly at the risk of someone entering the room. Dreadbear is really tough to account for if you're not constantly checking the cameras, so you probably won't have time to hide if you're at the arcade machine. And unless you're listening really closely to hear Springtrap crawling in the vents, you probably won't have time to turn off the power and hide, so you're just gonna get stepped on, which I'm sure some of you might be into. Yeah, this section is really stressful for me when speedrunning this game, so I was really saddened to learn that there was once a really awesome skip for this section that was patched out. In the version 1.0.0 of this game, you could actually skip most of the arcade section by simply just walking into this locked door for a few seconds, which would let you walk through walls to instantly get to the ending. Not sure if this was an intentional secret callback to the tricks of FNAF World where you can do similar things there, but yeah, I really wish this wasn't removed as an option for those that know about it or just don't want to deal with the whole tedious fetch quest every single time. Anyways, let's get back on track here. After the cutscene is done, while the arcade machine is glitching out, run over to this lock and change all the numbers to 1. We'll have to get the code for this in a bit, and since the code never has any zeros, this can save some time when we come back with the code later. Then once it's ready, the arcade machine will highlight some green numbers, and then the order of these numbers you have to put into the lock is indicated by the order of red letters in the bottom right. For example, here the code is 37488. After dialing in the code, we can open the box, grab the key, and then use it here. This will initiate a countdown sequence, and it takes a bit to happen, and since the animatronics can still come to kill you, I just like to hide until the fireworks start. Then after narrowly escaping and crushing the Springtrap hologram in this cutscene, next we go to the FNAF sister location inspired level, Funtimes. Here, after finding the drive and inserting it into the monitor, we have to rebuild Circus Baby in the middle here, where we can see that something cost her an arm and a leg, or two. You have to order parts using this elevator here and hope that they aren't faulty. There is a chance that when you place the arm or leg in place, it won't function properly, so you'll have to send it back and then reorder it, which loses a whole bunch of time. Oh yeah, while all of this is happening, you have to keep an eye on Funtime Freddy and use Bonbon to corral him back onto his stage if he leaves it. You have to shock Ballora if she starts pirouetting in the halls, and you have to listen for Funtime Foxy's wubbing. If you do hear some wubs, there's a chance that Foxy is getting ready to escape, and if that's the case, you can calm him down by administering a little controlled shock. Oh yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the hard part yet. After all the pieces are in place, we now have to fuse them, which requires us to complete 5 little mini-games on the screen here. The first is a simple number memorization thing. The next 2 you have to create a path from the left node to the right by rotating a bunch of these tiles. It's harder than it looks, especially under pressure. And finally, the last 2 minigames here require you to match the colors of the tile seen on the left side of the screen to the one on the right. These also have some RNG elements, as there's a good chance that the objective is rotated, and if it is, you'll have to rub some brain cells together and try to compensate for it. In a perfect run, both tile games won't be rotated, but that's not exactly something you can count on. Also, to save a bit more time here, by clicking the head fuse and then pressing the S key and spacebar in quick succession, if you're big brain enough, you can actually do both the memory sequence as well as one of the tile puzzles at the same time. Then, once all the fuses are fused, we can exit this room and make our way to the sister location elevator. Now, normally here you have to sit through a cutscene where these fuckers cause it to crash, but up until version 1.1.8, similar to how we did in the second stage, after pressing the button in the elevator, you can pause and change difficulty to load right into the next section to save a whole bunch of time. Then after coming to, we get another vent-like maze section. At first the maze might seem confusing, but basically if you just stay to the right and only make a left when you see the shadowy figure hide back, you'll be out in no time. And the stress of this game isn't anywhere close to being over, as next we got the level named Lost Media. Kinda fitting, no? Here we are stuck in a warehouse room with Ennard patrolling around, and patrol it certainly does. It has the vision of a hawk and can spot you like a mile away, and if it does, run, and use the pallets to try and block it. While avoiding Ennard, you have to channel your inner Gordon Freeman to find a crowbar which is randomly placed on 1 or 2 of the workbenches found around the room. Big surprise. Then, after finding it, you can use it to bust open the lowest drawer in this tool chest to find the keycard inside, and thankfully for once, this one's not randomized and you'll always find it here in the same spot. Then, after using the keycards to open this door and powering up the generators, we have to link this generator to the exit door by solving 3 fuse puzzles. You do this by finding 3 of these terminals which tell you which fuses go where, but you have to be careful as some of them will be flipped, and you also have to pay attention to the red, blue, and green cables. For the most part, this section just boils down to how fast you can spot the fuses in the box that you need and how cumbersome Ennard is, but if you're really unlucky, there will be a duplicate fuse in your box, and much like with Circus Baby's limbs, one of them will be defective, wasting even more time. But after all 3 terminals are connected, the exit door opens and we can climb up to the final stage of the game in the back alley. This stage is very similar to the FNAF 3 room, as once again we get to play a little minigame on the screen here, this time a throwback to Pizzeria Simulator. Basically, you just have to throw pizzas at the children, and there are 4 levels here that you have to clear, with each one getting more difficult. And while you're trying to play this game, you also have to repel Scrap Baby approaching from the distance, flash spam Molten Freddy crawling in the vents, and keep an eye on Scrap Trap sitting at his desk. Every once in a while, he will get up and bolt over to try and kill you, and you just have to slam the door in his face and call him back to his desk. I find it really stressful since the cues indicating when he's about to run are really subtle. Anyways, there's also a box that you have to open here, so you have to look around and find 3 randomly placed notes that indicate the images and order that you need. To save some time, you can also just find 2 of them and then guess and check for the 3rd one. And this box contains a key which you can use to open this door to the left, which leads to a projector room, which also contains the coin reward for completing the minigame outside. You can then take this coin, toss it into Rockstar Freddy, and press the 2 red buttons on his arms to get him to spew up some paper pieces. You then have to bring these back to the projector to put the poster back together. Then once done, you can pull this switch to open this door to grab these pruning shears, which you can then use to cut open the chains blocking the way to the exit. Now before we go on, this section also used to have a sweet skip that you could do, and it was relatively easy as well. Basically, after getting the paper pieces from Rockstar Freddy, you could kinda just go to the chains, look down, and walk to the right, and this let you clip right on through. Now this one's a bit too easy, so I guess I can see why it was patched out, but I still wish it was left in to skip having to do this mess. On the flip side, I do appreciate that the developers even went as far as adding this text here if you did still manage to skip the section too soon after some updates. Anyways, once reaching the end here, we go back underground for the last section of the game. We make our way into this room where we can hit up this computer to watch some awesome YouTube videos as well as some blueprint schematics. Then, after some time, a motion trigger will activate, and after leaving the PC to check it out, Vanny will actually come and bop you over the head. There is a cutscene that happens with burn trap and stuff, but we're speedrunning here, so we skip all of that. And then, after walking through a looping party room where the events of the FNAF 4 arcade game plays out, we reach one final room with a Fredbear plush on stage, and that is time for the speedrun, as we presumably get schwacked by Fredbear before whatever goes on here happens. Now after several runs, the best time me and my sanity could muster was just over 32 minutes, which would currently put me in like 13th place in the world for this category. Certainly not as good as my pal Astral Spiff's sub 25, or AJ here, who currently has the world record of just 17 minutes and 46 seconds. Glitched Attraction was actually my first FNAF fan game that I've ever played, and honestly, it was awesome. And it's kinda weird, despite its name, I actually had less glitches affect me than an official FNAF release. Now this game teeters a bit too close to requiring too much luck for my taste with all of the RNG that has to line up for a good run, but nonetheless, I highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't yet. I'll have it linked for you in the description where you can download it for free. Anyways, while you're here, check out some of my other speedrun videos and be sure to subscribe to find your way back here in the future. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you in a bit.